It's almost 2020. Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Now today I will be talking about my 10 bookish goals and resolutions for the next year. Now I'm not the type of person to actually make goals and resolutions for myself because I know that I am a mood reader. That's part of the reason why I tend to not make monthly TBRs, because I know that once, on one day I like a particular genre and I want to read this certain type of book, and then by the next day I might not want to read it anymore, or even by next week, or even by next month. So how am I supposed to make very specific goals and resolutions for myself for the whole year? I don't really know. I don't like keeping myself accountable for certain things because it makes me want to not do it more. So that's why I was like hesitant about making my 10 bookish goals. But then upon self-reflection and upon seeing this video a lot on YouTube for the past week or for the past 2 weeks, I've noticed that these goals can actually help you or help me make a better reading year. Like, I can be more well-rounded as a reader. I can read more forms of media in that sort of way. And it also keeps me accountable for my actions. And also, by the end of 2020, my goal is to reflect on these goals and to see how I've achieved them and met them, or how I basically ignored them and said goodbye to them. So the first bookish goal that I have for myself is to not be afraid of the stories that I read. Now, I'm usually pretty good at this. Like, I really don't care about people's opinions of what I read. So if people think that all I do is just read romance and I don't read anything else and that romance is a bad genre, or all I do is read young adult, even though I'm not a young adult anymore, I don't really care, because it's my time that I'm spending on these books and I'm not forcing them to read it. So, but sometimes I do feel like I'm being criticized and looked at like I'm not a real reader because I read one form of media too much. Like, for example, like there's this whole debate going on about how audiobooks doesn't count as reading because you're not actually physically reading the book, you're just listening to it, so you shouldn't count it. Or there's other like people that think that you shouldn't be able to count novellas towards your reading challenge on Goodreads because they're so short, they're only 30 pages, and then like it counts as cheating. And this is kind of like a very negative attitude to have towards reading that I don't appreciate, because it's still reading, you're still enjoying it, you're still putting time to it, and you're supporting authors and you're supporting their stories. I want to talk more about novellas, and I want to talk more about the short stories that I do read on my channel and to my followers across all my social media platforms, because it does consider as reading. My next bookish resolution or goal is to read the damn book. And what I mean by this is that I have a ton of books on my shelves. Like, this is not all my shelves. There's more shelves, but I'm just not showing it in this angle. But there's a lot of books on these shelves that I've told myself I'll save it for another time. I'll read this another time when I'm less busy, when I'm more concentrated. Oh, this book is so good. Like, I know it's going to be good and I don't want to read it now because like after I read it, then like I'm going to be in a bookish hangover, and then like I would want more from the author, but then like this is their latest novel. So like I can't, I'll save it for another time is basically what I tell myself. And then what ends up happening is that they keep stocking up. The author that I've been putting off puts out more books, and then I put off more of their books, and it just becomes like this whole backlogged mess. And I don't want that anymore. I don't want to have that attitude of putting off a new release or putting off an arc. I want to enjoy the book as soon as I get it. I want to have the same excitement. I want to have the attitude of having a book in my hand and going like, wow, I really am excited to read this. And you know what? I'm going to put time towards this month or this week to finish this book, and to not let it sit on my shelf for the next 2 years without being read. So the third bookish goal or resolution that I have for myself is similar to the second one, and it's called Read the Damn Author. Now, I have a lot of authors on my list that I've been sleeping on because I've been putting it off, because I'm like, okay, my friends love these authors. I know that they're good. Like, they have so many high ratings. They have like 30,000 readings on their latest novels. They're all 4 stars. So it has to be a good author and it has to be a good book. But I just put them off because I never put time towards it again. Like, I'm always scared that like they're not going to meet my expectations I have, and then I procrastinate and then I end up not reading them. There's literally like a whole list of authors on Kindle or Kindle Unlimited and even on my shelves that I haven't read because I've just know that they're good, but I'm scared to touch it. And because I'm scared that I'm going to read all their work and then I'm going to have none of their work left to read. And then it's going to cause this whole mess of where like, wow, I really want to read more books from them, but they've literally only put out 5 books. So if you guys can get that idea that I have, then like maybe you guys can relate to this. But my 2020 resolution is to just pick up the author, make a plan for myself, and get reading done so that I can know the vibes of new authors. So the next bookish goal for myself is to not feel guilty and to not force myself to read. So what I mean by this is that this year, what happened was that in the beginning of 2019, I set up reading challenges for myself on Goodreads, and I set myself up to read one book. Just one book. And people were like commenting on my status update going like, girl, like you read so much, why would you only do one book? And the reason behind it is because in the last 3 years that I've done the reading challenge, I've set myself goals up for in the 300s zone. And I've been working myself like a dog for each 3 years to push myself to my limits of reading, to always consistently read a book a day, and to make myself feel bad that I can't finish a book a day. And like the ultimate goal was to always do 365 so that I could finish one book a day. And I remember there were months where I fell behind in my reading challenge, and I sat myself down and I just kept reading until it became a job and it wasn't fun anymore. And so that's why this year in 2019, I set myself up for the goal of 1, and to tell myself that if I don't feel like reading, if I don't have time to read, then I shouldn't feel guilty about reading at all. Like just to enjoy my life and to not make my hobby as a job. So that's what I want to carry on in 2020. I never want to force myself to read anymore because reading is a hobby. Like it shouldn't be feeling like it's work, and I want it to keep the excitement up, and I want to have fun when I'm reading. So that is exactly why I am not going to force myself to read in 2020. So the next bookish goal is a little bit more specific, and it's to read my Harlequins and to read my historical romances. Now I know that I haul a lot of Harlequins every single month, and I tend to buy a lot of historical romances from time to time. Like usually like I buy in stacks. If you look at my book reviews, you'll see that I hardly review a historical romance or I hardly review a Harlequin. And I think I bought so many Harlequins this year, but I've never read one. I think I'd never read one this year. And it's like mind blowing about how I hoard these books for the specific moment of where I feel like that I would binge all of it and then I could just go crazy. But then until then, like I'm just spending money on books that I'm not constantly reading. So for 2020, I want to make sure that I have a set number of Harlequins to conquer and to read, have a set number of historical romances that I want to read. So right now on these shelves right here, like right here, these are my historical romances. They're double stacked. So there's actually 2 rows of books like behind here, and it's just a mega collection. And I want to actually read them. And then this is just one of the shelves of Harlequin books, and that's another shelf of Harlequin. So like all that is double stacked as well. Like I have Harlequin Presents, Harlequin Romance, Harlequin Historical, Harlequin Special Edition. Like I have all the series, but I've never read one this year, and that's insane to me. So then that's why I'm deciding that I have to set a goal for myself and that I actually have to read them. So the next bookish goal that I have for myself is to discover new genres, or just to branch out and move into new genres. So I know that I'm a romance booktuber where I talk a lot about romance because that's the majority of all of what I read. But I don't want to be categorized as this one person that only reads romance. Like I want to be a very diverse reader. I want to try out new genres, and that's why I'm excited to branch out into thrillers, into psychological thrillers, into financial thrillers, to like whatever thrillers, or just to other genres like women's fiction as well. So the next bookish goal that I have for myself is to read the books that I have had on my shelf for the past 2 years or more. There's a lot of books that I have on my shelf that I haven't read yet, and it's actually literally collecting dust. And I want to make it a goal for myself that each month I pick up a book that has been backlogged and that has been on my shelf for the past like 2 or 3 years that I haven't read, just so I could get them read and to not waste my money on those books, and just so I could feel accomplished. So that's one of my bookish goals. So the next bookish goal that I have for myself is to reread my favorites. Now there's a saying where it's like, you know, life's too short to read a bad book, and then lots of people also think that life's too short to reread novels, but I want to not feel guilty about rereading my favorites. There's a lot of favorites on my shelves that I have read in the past like 3 years, 4 years, and while I still remember the story, I still want to revisit that world, and I still want to revisit those characters in the story, and I don't want to feel guilty about it just because I have new books in the mail or because I bought new books. I want to relive the stories and remember the reason why I love them, or reflect upon that time in my life and realize that the book that I loved so much back when I was in grade 9 is now one of my most hated books. That actually did happen to me with one of the books. I thought it was my favorite, and then I reread it like 3 years later, and then I realized that it was kind of like a very shitty novel. So the next bookish goal is to set mini TBRs for myself. Now, the first time I ever did a TBR, I think was in December, and I set myself up for 4 books, and I figured that 4 books would be easy to accomplish. Like, I wouldn't fail right in front of everybody's faces, and I found it really helpful. Like, it set like this criteria that I have to get these books read so that I wouldn't push it off and miss the publication dates if there were arcs, or I wouldn't push it off to the point where I would never read them in this year or in the next year. So I want to set up mini TBRs for myself every single month just to hold myself accountable and just to have like a basic structure and outline of all the books that I want to read in the month, at least like bare minimum. That way I can feel like my life is kind of not a chaotic mess and is kind of organized. So the last bookish goal that I have for myself is to read the ebooks on my Kindle. So I actually do have a Kindle. I don't just read physical romances, and I just don't read traditional romances as well. So, and I also want to read books from my Kindle Unlimited monthly. So I do have a Kindle Unlimited monthly subscription, and there are a lot of months that I just throw $10 out the window and not read any of the KU books there because I forget that I have the subscription, or I'm just not in the mood for it. Well, I want to incorporate that more into my TBRs. I want to incorporate that more in my monthly read-ups, because it's money that I'm literally throwing away if I'm not going to sit down and actually read a couple of the titles. So that is all my 10 bookish goals and resolutions for 2020. Hopefully I can go about and achieve all these goals and resolutions and I don't break any of them. And let me know down below in the comments if you have any goals and resolutions, because I want to change up my goals and resolutions, or you give me ideas and I can add on to my goals and resolutions as well. And if you guys like this video, definitely subscribe and give me a like. Bye. Can't let you go. I can't let you go, no.